Gospel Reflections for the 33rd Sunday of Ordinary Time, Year C, 13th of November 2022. The Gospel text is from Luke chapter 21, verses 5 to 19. The main focus of this Gospel reading is this: the Lord invites us to face our fears about the end of our life or the end of the world, and the possibility of persecution for following him with patient endurance, since they provide opportunities for us to bear witness to him. In brief, facing fears about the world's end and religious persecution with patient endurance. In the first part of today's Gospel, Jesus predicts about the impending destruction of the Temple of Jerusalem, which became a reality later on at the hands of invading Romans in 70 AD. He might have used this prediction to instruct his disciples about the impermanence of human achievements, structures, including the places of worship such as the temple and possessions. He also seemed to connect this catastrophe to the end of the world. As the liturgical year comes to an end by next Sunday, the Church, by prescribing today's Gospel text, reminds us that we are only exiles and wayfarers on this earth, as we are immersed or engrossed in worldly affairs. We often fail to look beyond the immediate here and now. We quite often forget that as we get older and older, life becomes shorter and shorter for us, and we are drawing nearer and nearer to our ultimate home in heaven. Today's Gospel invites us to give a serious thought to the end of our life on earth or the end of the world, and the approach of the day of judgment for us sooner or later. When people asked Jesus about the exact time of the end, he indicated the futility of such calculations in chapter 21, verse 7. Instead of asking when the world would end, he wanted them to focus on how they should prepare themselves to face the end. Are we always prepared to depart from this world whenever the Lord calls us? This thought should fill us not with fear, sorrow, or despair, but with a longing and hope to be with Christ forever. Once again, this thought should fill us not with fear, sorrow, or despair, but with a longing to hope to be with Christ forever. It impels us to think of the impermanence of our possessions and life itself here on earth, just as the Temple of Jerusalem, which was adorned with beautiful stones and gifts dedicated to God, as verse 5 says, was destroyed by the Romans, so also the earthly temples of our bodies will be destroyed one day. In addition, all our latest marvels in technology and architecture will also pass away. This reminds us of the frailty of all man-made structures and not to be over-attached to them as if they are our permanent dwelling places. In the church also, instead of keeping ourselves busy in building and admiring our magnificent churches, cathedrals, and monuments, and competing with the other parishes for the most fabulous religious structures, we are called to put our trust in the Lord, not in these structures, who alone is our strength and our salvation. The Lord alone is our strength and our salvation. In the second part, Jesus warns his disciples about the dreadful portents and great signs from heaven that will befall on humanity at the end of time, as verses 9 to 11 say. These natural calamities and political upheavals are presented in a language that we do not understand. But we observe similar dreadful signs in the present world also, such as international terrorism, civil wars among the nations, the threat of nuclear holocaust, pestilences like COVID-19, and the increasing natural calamities like floods, earthquakes, cyclones, and tsunamis caused by environmental degradation. Naturally, this thought generates a sense of fear in us. Jesus assures us that even though cosmic tumult and man-made as well as natural calamities may shake and frighten us, we are not to be afraid, as verse 9 says. With the firm trust that God is present even in the midst of these trials, we should be careful enough not to permit our fears and anxieties to control us. God, and not fears and anxieties, is our master, and He is in control of our life and destiny. Every day we need to train our minds with God's grace not to allow our fears to be our masters, but make them our servants who remain under our control. Who controls you? Your fear or God? Who controls you? Your fear or God? Further, in today's text, Jesus cautions us not to be led astray by the false promises of bogus messiahs and false prophets who may take advantage of this fear psychosis generated in our minds due to an uncertain future. It is mentioned in chapter 21 verses 7 to 10. Today, there is no dearth of preachers, teachers, faith healers, God-men, and religious sects who exactly predict the end of the world, though Jesus himself has purposely kept it a secret in order to keep us ready and prepared to meet the end at any time. The world may not end exactly on the dates fixed by prophets of doom, but the social and political upheavals mentioned above become red signals for us to end our own little worlds, the world of selfishness, the world of materialism, secularization, godlessness, and get busy in creating a world of sharing, caring, peacemaking, and building up of communities. Are you in your little world or in God's world? In which world are you? Finally, in the third part, Jesus speaks about the persecutions that his followers will have to face before the end time and the opportunities offered to his disciples to bear witness to his name, bear witness before their persecutors in such situations, as verses 12 to 19 say. Jesus instructs them in spite of severe persecutions, they are to persevere in their loyalty to his teachings till the end, because by their endurance they would gain their souls, as verse 19 says. Let us examine whether we lost wonderful opportunities in the past to bear witness to his name because of our failure to hold on to his values firmly and patiently when they were opposed in the world, or when we were betrayed even by our own kith and kin for following Jesus. Do we withdraw our good work or service to the poor and the marginalized when there is opposition and criticism out of over anxiety and imaginary fears? Jesus assures us of wisdom to speak at that time and of ultimate protection by God by saying, not a hair of your head will perish. Not a hair of your head will perish. Verse 18 says, our endurance comes from relying fully not on our human resources but on patient trust in God and His assurances and promises? Are we convinced that God is on our side even in most painful situations? A prayer. Deliver me, Lord, from all fears, worries, and anxieties that keep me enslaved. I surrender them into your hands and admit that your power and dominion over me is greater than my fears. Keep me always loyal to you so that I may endure until the end. Amen.